Owen Hale ordered a wife the way he ordered seed corn and barbed wire, by mail with specifications and a money order folded inside the envelope so the Denver Matrimonial Agency would know he was serious. He wrote 3 words on the form where it asked what kind of woman he wanted in the same careful hand he used for the figures in his account book. Quiet, hard-working, undemanding. He sat at the table in the cabin he had built with his own hands above Bell Creek, 15 miles from the nearest town in the high, cold country of Colorado, and read those 3 words back to himself by lamplight, and thought they were the most honest thing he had ever put on paper. He did not waste words because he had spent most of his life with no one to waste them on. He did not want a wife to talk to. He wanted 1 more pair of hands and 1 fewer empty chair. And he meant to be decent about the arrangement in every way a decent man could be. The agency sent back a tintype of a woman named Margaret, and Owen propped it against the lamp and studied it a long time. The photographer had done his work. Margaret looked, in that small brown picture, like a woman who would be quiet and hard-working and never once ask him for a thing he did not already mean to give. He would learn later that a tintype made a person about 40% more agreeable than they actually were, and he learned it the way a man learns most true things on the frontier, which was the hard way, on a wind-swept platform with his hat in his hands. The train from Denver came up to the Bell Creek depot on a gray afternoon in October of 1884, 3 hours late, hissing steam across the boards. Owen had washed his neck and put on his good shirt and stood where the agency letter told him to stand, holding the folded marriage paper so she would know him. He watched the passengers come down, an old drummer with a sample case, 2 ranch hands, a widow in black, and then a woman stepped down from the freight end of the train who was nearly as tall as he was, with her chin up and a small leather valise in one hand, and behind her 2 railmen were swearing softly as they wrestled something enormous and crated down a plank ramp. It was a piano, an upright piano in a slatted wooden crate, taller than a man, and the woman turned and pointed and said, "Mind the left corner, it's where the Hammers live." Owen looked at the piano. Then he looked at the woman. She was not the tintype. She had the same face, more or less, but the tintype had left out everything that mattered, the set of her jaw, the way she looked at the depot and the mountains behind it, and the whole arrangement. She had crossed an ocean and a continent to enter, as if she were appraising it and had not yet decided. "You'll be Mr. Hale," she said. It was not a question. Her voice had wails in it, the hills of it, soft and certain. "I am," he said. "You're Margaret." "I'm Bron," she said. "Bronwyn. The agency wrote Margaret because they said an English name would settle a man better. I let them. It seemed a small thing to let them have on paper." She set down the valise. "It is not a small thing in person. My name is Bronwyn Price, and I will answer to Bron. And I have brought my piano because I do not go anywhere it cannot go. I should tell you that now, before the train leaves and you are stuck with the freight charge." A knot of townsfolk had gathered, the storekeeper's wife, 2 men from the livery, a boy. They had come to see Owen Hale's mail-order bride, the quiet one he had sent away for like a plow, and they were getting a tall Welsh woman and a piano and a speech, and Owen could feel them enjoying it. He had lived above this town for 9 years and given it nothing to talk about, and now he had given it this. "The freight charge is paid," he said, because it was the only part of the situation he was sure of. "I paid it when I paid for your ticket. The form didn't say anything about a piano." "The form didn't ask," said Braun. Somebody in the crowd laughed. Owen put his hat back on his head, and he bent and took the handle of her valise, and he said, "It's 15 miles up to the place. The piano will have to come by ox cart tomorrow. It won't ride in the wagon. We'd best start before the light goes." And something in how she looked at him then changed by a quarter inch. She had braced on the platform for a man who would be angry about the piano. He had not done it. He had reached for her bag and worried about the daylight. She read nothing of this off his face, because his face did not give things away, but she filed it against the long winter coming down off the peaks. They rode the 15 miles mostly without speaking. The cabin sat in a fold of the mountain with a barn and a good spring and a view that on a clear evening could stop the breath in a person's chest. And Braun looked at all of it from the wagon seat and said only, "There's room for the piano in the front room, if the table moves to the wall." "There's a table where the table is," Owen said. "There will be a piano where the piano is," said Braun, "so one of them is moving, and a table is lighter." He did not answer that, but the next morning, before the ox cart came grinding up the track with the crate roped to its bed, he had moved the table to the wall. They were married 3 days later by a circuit preacher passing on his rounds. In the front room, the piano still crated against the long wall, because it would take 4 men and 2 more days to free it without cracking the case. Braun wore a gray wool dress and the thin gold locket she never took off, and she said the words plainly, and Owen said them plainly, and the preacher ate 2 helpings of her stew and rode on. That night, Braun laid a single sheet of paper on the cleared table in her own hand and turned the lamp toward it. "Before we go on, I have written some things down. I find it goes better written down. You may read them and tell me which ones are impossible, and we will speak about those." Owen read the paper. There were 7 things on it. She would have a room of her own with a door that shut. She would have a shelf for her books, and he would build it, because a shelf built was a thing a person could see was meant. The piano was hers and stayed hers, played whether the day had gone well or badly. She would keep her own name on anything she signed. She would not be struck, not once, not ever, and the first time would be the last day of the marriage. She would do her full half of the work and expected him to know which half was his. And the 7th, the right to say no. Owen read aloud, slowly, without giving a reason. He set the paper down. The fire moved in the grate. The crated piano stood against the wall like a witness. "The shelf I can do," he said. "The room with the door, there's the small room off the kitchen, it's yours. The name on the deed, the clerk in town will fuss, but the clerk in town can fuss." "And the striking," said Braun, "because she said the hard things plainly and got them out of the road." "A man who'd strike a woman is a coward who's run out of words," Owen said. "I've got few enough words. I'd not waste them being a coward." He looked back down at the list. "That last one, though." "Yes," said Braun, and her chin came up, because this was the one she expected to lose. "That one, without a reason given. I will not strike it out. I have struck it out for other men, and I will not do it again." "I'm not asking you to strike it out," Owen said. "You wrote it like it's mine to give you, the right to say no without a reason. It isn't mine to give. You came with it. It doesn't need my permission to be yours." For a moment, Bronwyn Price, who had carried a list of terms folded against her ribs across an ocean and a continent, because she had learned that a woman who did not write things down got nothing she had not written down, could not find a single word in either of her languages. She had been ready to argue for that line. She had rehearsed it on the boat, and he had handed it back to her as though she had been arguing for something that was already hers, which she had been, only no one had ever once said so. "Then we are agreed on all 7, she said when she could. "We're agreed," said Owen. "I'll start the shelf tomorrow." "You'll want it before the books warp." Before the snow shut the pass for good, Owen rode the 15 miles down to the county clerk to add her name to the deed, as the paper said he would. The clerk, a soft pink man named Tilden with ink on his cuff, turned the deed around and read it and frowned. "It's customary," Tilden said, "to put it under the husband. Cleaner that way. Saves trouble later when she goes." He did not finish the way he meant to. "Wives don't generally hold land in their own name up here, Mr. Hale." "This one does," said Owen. "It's only that it looks unusual is all." "It looks like her name," Owen said, "on land that's half hers. Write it as I gave it to you, or I'll find a clerk who can." Tilden wrote it, Price next to Hale, in 2 different hands, and Owen folded the copy into his coat and rode home ahead of the weather, and never once mentioned the argument, so that Bron did not learn for a year that it had even happened. Winter came down early and hard that year, the snow walling them in by the middle of November, so that the 15 miles to town became a thing you did not do unless somebody was dying. And in that long white silence, the 2 of them learned each other the slow way, the only way that lasts. She learned that he rose in the dark and broke the ice on the trough before she woke, every morning, never a word about it, so that for 2 weeks she thought the ice simply did not form on their spring. She learned that he had read every book in the cabin, which was 4, until the spines were soft. She learned that the shelf he built was not a plank on 2 brackets. He worked it in the evenings out in the cold barn by lantern, and he carved the edge, a running line of mountain laurel down the front rail, slow and clumsy, and then less clumsy. And when he hung it and stood her books in it, he said only, "It's level, I checked it twice," and went out to the stock. And Bron stood in front of her carved shelf in a country that was not hers, and put her hand over her mouth. He learned that she was not quiet. She talked to the stove and the bread and the weather and the piano, and eventually to him, in a steady, warm, Welsh-cornered stream that he found, to his own great surprise, he did not want to stop. "You wrote 3 words on that agency form," she said one evening, not looking up from the hatchet and the kindling. "I have it from the letter you sent. Quiet, hard-working, undemanding." "I did," Owen said. "You got one of the 3. "Hard-working," he said. "Hard-working." She set another split stick on the pile, which was already taller than his. "You'll notice I can fill the wood box faster than you and complain about it twice as long. Were you disappointed, with the other 2 going missing in the post?" Owen weighed the question with the seriousness he gave to weather and water. "No," he said. "I had quiet for 9 years up here. I found I'd had my fill of it." He picked up the full box. "Undemanding, I'd not have known what to do with. A person who asks for nothing tells you nothing. I'd sooner be told." She watched him carry the wood to the stove, and she did not say anything, and that was its own kind of answer. The piano came free of its crate on a clear, hard day in December, the only break in the snow for 2 weeks, and it took 4 men from the livery the whole short afternoon to do it. They had the slats off and ropes under it and were inching it through the door when one of them, a big livery hand named Coombs, said, grinning, "What's a piano for, way up here? Ain't nobody to hear it but the elk." "The elk have ears," said Bron from inside, holding the door. "And so it turns out, do you, Mr. Coombs, and you've not stopped talking since you came up the track." The men laughed at Coombs, and Coombs laughed too, and they set the piano against the long wall where the table used to be. Bron paid them out in hot bread and coffee and a tune before they went back down the mountain in the last of the light. She lifted the lid and ran her hands down at once, finding what the cold and the journey had done to the tuning, wincing, forgiving it. Then she played them something quick and bright off the hills of home, and the 4 hard men stood in their coats with their hats in their hands and said nothing at all, and Owen watched from the back of his own front room as the music did to 4 strangers what it had been quietly doing to him for a month. When the door had shut behind the last of them, Bron stayed at the keys and did not turn around. "You stood through the whole of it," she said. "I felt you back there." "I did. Most men go and see to something in the barn when I play. Suddenly there is always a horse wants looking at." "There's a horse wants looking at," Owen said. "It can wait." He was quiet a moment. "Play the slow one again, the one from last night." "I'll not pretend I didn't hear it through the wall." She turned her head to him then over her shoulder, and something moved behind her face that the tintype had never once managed. Then she turned back and played him the slow one. After that she played every single evening, and Owen learned that she played one way when she was happy and another when she was tired, and that he could tell the difference through the wall, and that he had started going to sleep by it, and he learned one black morning in January that he could be afraid. She woke with a fever. By midday she did not know the room. Near noon she gripped his wrist hard and looked straight through him and said, in a high, frightened girl's voice that was not her own, "Is the boat in? Tell my ma'am the boat is in." And Owen said low, "The boat's in, Bron. You're safe ashore. I've got you." Though there was no boat, and never had been, because it was the only thing he could think to give her. The snow had walled them in past any hope of the doctor, and Owen Hale, who had buried his mother and father and a brother without once letting a thing show on his face, sat on the edge of her bed more frightened than he had been at any of those graves. He kept the fire high. He cooled her face with snowmelt. Then he did the thing his mother had done when he was small and burning, the only doctoring he had. He took down the thin green volume of Tennyson she had stood on the carved shelf, and he read to her badly, in a low, flat voice, hour after hour through the worst of it. He did not know if she heard a word, but it gave him something to do with the terror, besides watch. On the 3rd night the fever broke. She came back to herself near dawn, soaked and weak and clear-eyed, and the first thing she saw was Owen, asleep upright, in the chair, with the green book open on his chest and his thumb still holding the place. She looked at him a long time and did not wake him. When he stirred, she had her eyes closed again, letting him think she slept, as he had let her think the ice did not form, because some kindnesses are better left a little hidden. Spring came up the valley slow and then all at once. The pass opened. They could have gone to town any day they liked, and they found, both of them, that they were in no hurry to. They had built a thing in the white silence, without ever quite saying they were building it. He was still no freer with his talk than the day she stepped off the train. But he had started leaving words where she would find them, the small offerings another man might make in flowers. A new shelf, unasked, above the first. The trough ice broken every morning, which she now knew about and let him keep as his. The lamp turned to her side of the table when she sat down to read. It was Bron who said the thing first, because Owen Hale would have carried it to his grave rather than risk it landing wrong. They were on the porch in the last light of an April evening, and the valley below was going gold and then blue. "The pass is open," Owen said. "Has been 3 days. I can take you down to town tomorrow if you've a mind, or to Denver. You came up here on a paper and a posted ticket. Nobody's holding you to it now the snow's gone." Bron turned her head and looked at him. "Is that you asking me to go?" she said. "Or you asking me to stay and putting it on backward so it can't hurt you if I leave?" Owen was quiet a moment. "The second one," he admitted. "I thought so." She wrapped her hands around her cup of coffee and looked back out at the valley. "Then I'll say it plain, since you'll not. There is a word in Welsh I have been trying to give you all winter, and there is no door into it from English. We say hiraeth. It is the ache for a home you are not in, a longing for a place, or for a time, or for a thing that may never even have been, that lives in you like a low note held down." Owen was quiet a while. He watched the valley turn. "All my life," Bron said, "I have carried hiraeth for a place I could not find, a home that was mine and held me. I carried it across the water. I expected to carry it into the grave." She turned the cup in her hands. "I have not felt it since the snow melted. I went looking for it the other day, the way you put your tongue to a tooth that used to ache, and it was gone. I did not know what to call the thing that is in its place. I thought you should know it is your doing." The light went down off the high snow. Owen Hale, who had ordered a quiet, undemanding wife by mail and gotten a tall Welsh woman and a piano and a list of 7 terms and the first true company of his entire life, turned the word over and found slowly that he had one to set beside it. Not Welsh. He had no Welsh. But the plain old word his grandfather's people had carried out of England and across the sea. A word so old it had gone soft and small in everybody's mouth until nobody heard it any more. "There's an English word," he said, "older than the country, homely. People use it now to mean a plain face. But it didn't start there. It meant a thing that's of the home, warm because it belongs, a homely fire, a homely table." He looked at his hands. "I never had a use for it before. My place was a roof and a spring and 4 books. It wasn't homely. It was just out of the weather." He was quiet. "It is now. You made it that. So I suppose your word and mine are pointing at the same thing from 2 sides, and they met here, on this porch, which is about the only place either of them was ever going to." Bronwyn Price set down her coffee. She had crossed an ocean braced for a transaction, her terms written down because she had stopped expecting anything she had not demanded in ink. And here was a man who hoarded his words like winter grain, telling her, in the only way he had, that she had given him a home, and he had a word for it older than the flag over the depot. She did not cross the porch to him. She did not need to. The two words sat between them in the blue dusk, heareth and homely, two people's whole longing named at last from both sides at once. And that was the crossing, and they both knew it. They were married 41 years. The piano went where they went, which after that first place was only one other, a wider valley with better water where the laurel grew, and Bron played it every evening of those 41 years, happy in one way and tired in another, and Owen went to sleep by it to the end. They had 3 children who grew up certain that everyone's father broke the trough ice in the dark unasked, and everyone's mother kept her own name on the deed. The carved shelf hung on every wall they owned. When Owen died first in the spring, with the past just opened, the green Tennyson was on the table by the bed, with his thumb mark worn into the cover, and Bron read the long ringing lines back to him at the last, badly, in a low, flat voice, returning the only doctoring he had ever known how to give. History does not keep the names of 2 homesteaders above Bell Creek who married out of an agency catalog and made it last. The cabin fell in long ago, and the laurel took the dooryard. But somewhere in a county record there is a deed signed in 2 different hands, Hale and Price, side by side, because she kept her name as the paper said she would, and that deed is the only public proof any of it ever happened. The rest lived where the real things live, in the warm of a snowed-in room, in the held note under a closing door, in a word from one old language meeting, a word from another over a cup of cooling coffee, and in the small daily decencies of a man who could not say a thing aloud and so said all of it with his hands instead. If this story stayed with you, sit with it a moment before you go. Have you ever braced yourself all the way down for someone to be exactly what you feared and had them turn out to be something else entirely? Tell me in the comments. I read them, and the ones about being wrong in the best possible way are the ones I keep. And if you want another story about 2 people who started as a cold arrangement and found the realest thing neither of them planned for, it's right here, and I'll see you there.